comics too.
Yeah, mostly like it was funny when we started this series, we almost didn't read any like Marvel or DC at all. So like my comic book exposure has been so far away from this like really classic style of what people think of as comic books, but
And
it's it's just it's such a smaller part of the genre than people realize, but it's still pretty substantial. This is 666, so there's a lot of issues with
right.
Spider-Man.
Well, if you get the previews catalog, Spider-Man is always up there in the ones and twos of most popular, most sales.
Yeah,
It's
and it's got to
Batman.
have been like that for years and years and
Years
years.
and years. Yeah, people are just he's on their pull list.
Is Superman usually up there?
Action Comics, Superman, Batman, Detective Comics. Every
'Cause
once in a
I could
while
see Superman having dropped off a little bit, maybe.
it
But
does.
maybe I'm just out of it.
It ebbs and flows.
Spider-Man and Batman seem like the number one and two punch pretty heavy.
Isn't Spider-Man just fun to read though?
He is fun to read. I don't know, for some reason he seems like the most relatable character somehow. Like maybe universally relatable.
Uh-huh.
Like every
why
once
why
in
do
a
you
while
think
you
that
find a
is?
character. I was trying to think about that because like sometimes I'll find a character and it's like, oh, I really relate to this guy because he fits my niche. Like he has some unique thing that I can relate to. Like the classic thing for a comic book character that people relate like is, oh, he reads a lot of comic books, and then it's like, hey, I read a lot of comic
Yeah.
books. I relate to this guy.
They throw that in there.
Yeah, so that's an easy one. But somehow Peter Parker has, I don't know, maybe there's like the girl next door with the Mary Jane, or there's the like having responsibility and like trying to do the right thing and like friendly neighborhood. Like it's not like sometimes Superman's too big picture and sometimes Batman's too, like the being a billionaire is not really relatable, or Iron Man has that, or like the.
Well, to go back to the Stan Lee interview,
Mhm.
I relate to Spider-Man quite a bit because he's a hustler, right? He's out there. He could be a bad guy, and I'm always just like, why isn't he a bad guy? He could do so much great bad guy stuff. He could rob. He could get a couple dollars. He could get
I've
a
thought
couple
about being
dollars.
a bad guy if I was a superhero.
Yeah, you could. I mean, like you, but he's so like he has the opportunity, and somebody gives Spider-Man a check in one of the very early Spider-Man books, and Spider-Man's like, and they're like, for services rendered. He worked hard. He like thwarted a crime, and he worked hard for this check. So he goes to the bank with the check, Spider-Man, and he tries to get the check cashed. And this is a whole scene where Stan Lee has written this hilarious scene of Spider-Man trying to cash a check. Ultimately, he doesn't cash the check because anybody could dress up as Spider-Man and say, I got a check written out to Spider-Man.
That's
so
funny.
In
Yeah,
my
that's
mind,
an interesting one.
In my mind, I'm just like, Spider-Man is always working, but he doesn't get
He doesn't get the recognition, or like he does, but that's not what he's doing it for. Like, I love that the newspapers are against Spider-Man. Like, to me, that's one of my favorite elements is that the newspapers paint him as a menace.
Mm-hmm.
Like that side of it where it's like, it'd be one thing if he was doing it for the praise and everyone loved him. He's like individuals on the street love him, but the newspaper and the press really control what people think about someone. And like the fact that the newspaper is against him, I think is a great Spider-Man classic element. You got to cut to J. Jonah Jameson getting upset that
fired up.
Yeah,
he's fired up.
In this issue, he's the mayor, and he's apparently it's not doing well for his popularity that he has this vendetta against Spider-Man. But he's relentless.
It also doesn't seem like the cops are crazy about him either.
Yeah. Well, and then even that, like, as Peter Parker, he was, being the photographer, he feeds J. Jonah Jameson's negativity. You know, he's not doing it for the press. He's doing it because he's trying to do the right thing. I love that.
I do too.
And then that maybe the most relatable thing is that his life is so busy and he's just trying to balance being a good friend, being a good boyfriend, being a good grandson, being a good crime fighter, making money,
Making
all
money
of the
is
elements of life that we all have to do. He has to do them too, but he's got this whole other thing on top of it, and it makes for a busy life, and he's always running behind and trying to catch up.
Well, he's making money. Well, he's trying to make money, so he works. Currently, he's working at Horizon Labs.
Yeah, he's no longer the photographer.
And he's designing projects, and he's getting money for those. So he's he's on the hustle trying to get money.
Yeah, he's like an inventor.
He's an inventor, and but he's also involved in these two teams. I mean, he's spreading himself pretty thin here. He's part of the Fantastic Four, and he's also part of the Avengers. And he's running and gunning. He's all the time just pushing it to the limit. And that's pretty much what this entire issue is about.
Yeah, it really sets the stage for this kind of new problem and how it affects all of these different elements of his life. And so the new problem, the new, twist that Spider-Man now has to deal with is a lot I guess bed bugs are infecting random people in Manhattan and turning them into Spider-Man.
But I think there's a bigger, there's a big bad guy who is at play here, and we never see.
He's pulling the strings, and we don't know exactly what his big plan is. But it seems like he had some kind of control over the people who are infected with the Spidey power.
Right. And that's just it. They have Spidey powers.
Mm-hmm. But they don't necessarily have the responsibility of Spider-Man, and they don't have the training and the practice. There's a cool...
That's a great hook, because you're right. That's how Spider-Man's going to beat him. I've never read this entire run of Spider-Man, so I'm kind of curious. I was hooked on this too. I'm definitely going to keep reading it. And I was kind of curious as to how Spider-Man's going to beat 100 Spider-Man.
100 other Spideys. Yeah, there's a cool, there's a cool battle at the beginning. Not really that much action to it, but there's three superheroes and they're fighting this water guy, and they're like, I don't understand, how does how does Spider-Man beat this guy when it's three of us versus him and we can't do it? What is it that Spider-Man has? And they're like, well, it's, what is, I'm trying to look for what they actually said.
Well, in this
case,
how's
he doing it? 3 against 1. He's mopping the floor with us. And I've even got my spider powers back. How does Spider-Man do it when he has the spider powers? There's something about his training, and, he really does work. He's learning karate. He's studying karate. We see that's probably one of my favorite sections later in this issue.
But in this particular case, he actually uses technology to beat the water guy. Yeah,
he's real smart. He has whatever the canisters in his wrist. So he has the spider tracers, and he replaces it to freeze the water. Yeah. I don't really know how that works. Does that work? Does his web come out of there too? So then other people with spider powers don't have webs, or what level of technology does he have that these other spider people won't have?
Well, he explains this. He explains this later at Horizon Labs. So he is using his untested technology on this guy who happens to be water-based bad guy, freezes the dude, boom, freezes him. Now we can take him to jail in a big old ice cube. And then he rushes over to Horizon Lab where he's late for work, and he demonstrates how he can freeze these little worms and then bring them back to life.
Yeah, an hour later.
And
it's almost like wrapping them up in the web, where the web dissolves after an hour, but instead
it's freeze
it
technology.
freezes them, because I don't think you can wrap a thing of water in a web.
Yeah, so he outsmarted that guy, and he outsmarts these worms, and he freezes them, and then they're like, "Oh, we could do this. We could do this with anything, you know." And then they have all these like scenarios where freezing is the answer.
Mm-hmm. So there's a couple different. We can kind of bounce around, because it like most of these sections they don't necessarily have to follow each other one after one, but he goes to the Avengers at one point, and there's like a poker scene where he's like invited to play poker, and it's like they didn't invite him before because he had his spidey senses, and it's like cheating. But now that he's lost his spidey sense, which if you want to go to issue whatever where the arc where he loses his spidey sense, you can do that. It shows you where it is. I'm not on that page right now.
I'm at that page right now, and I have to say, this is one of my favorite pages because Hawkeye is in his original purple costume.
Oh, nice.
Not to nerd out too much, but I think Hawkeye should be wearing that costume. One of my biggest complaints with the Avengers movies is Hawkeye is wearing like black leather vest. That's not a Hawkeye costume. That Hawkeye should wear a purple costume with a big H on his head.
I like the purple. I'm not a big fan of the H, though.
I think it's
just having a big letter on your head is good. Except for Superman. I think he's the only one who can really pull off the big stupid letter.
Yeah, it's a big stupid letter on his forehead. But yeah,
but Spider-Man's in his white costume. What do you think about the white Spider-Man?
He was in his white costume because earlier he had a meeting with the FF.
Yeah.
Where he has to wear his white costumes, and he has all these costume changes.
Yeah, and he has like a really cool like nanotechnology fading in and out, where it's like he mentions that it's still long sleeves, like when he goes to a civilian costume, so he doesn't have to change in an alleyway anymore.
Yeah.
But if it's hot out, he still has to wear these long sleeves, which I thought was kind of a funny little moment.
There are funny little moments. Actually, the moment where him and Thing are at the door, and they're Spidey is actually changing into his regular Spider-Man costume with the touch of the button. And Thing is a little upset that they don't have matching costumes anymore, and that they weren't going to go to the poker game as twins.
Yeah. But what do you think about the white costume? Do you like it?
Oh, I think all his costumes are cool. I
really like the black and white, but his eyes are a little devilish. I don't know if I like that part.
I'm looking for a good black and white picture. Oh, you're right. Sure. Yeah, he's got like sort of like just straight black lenses over his eyes.
They got a little hook to him. And then Venom is in there too, which I guess for a second I thought it was like, did Spider-Man change his costume again? And now he's got like the black costume? But Venom's doing like a cool, like upside down, shooting 4 guys at the same time.
And here Venom is a good guy, right? Hard to
tell.
He
is. Yeah. He's on the side. But there was this quick flash to Venom, which I had to read it twice just because I was like, wait, what is going on?
Yeah, I don't remember what's going on. But yeah,
there's just
Venom.
So many elements of Spider-Man's life that they need to let you know what's going on and how that affects this new change to the Manhattan.
And the new change in this next panel, right after the Venom stuff, because Venom is having a conversation with his girlfriend who has been in the hospital for something. I can't remember all the particulars.
Yeah, she's like a journalist or something like that, and I'm not sure what it was.
But she's covering the story maybe of people with the bed bugs, but these bed bugs are a little more aggressive, and these people look crossed, actually.
Yeah, they're like way more freaking out than Spider-Man was when he first got bit. Like, a guy has like a piece of paper stuck to his head and his eyes are like, what's going on? You know, and like someone's chained to a bed, like not chained, but like got the wrist straps and restrained to a bed and is like screaming, I was on the ceiling.
Yeah, there's a lot of people